The emergency alarm screamed through the Coalition headquarters like a dying animal. Red lights flashed across every screen, and the smell of burning circuits filled the air as overloaded systems struggled to process the incoming data. Admiral. Park Hyun-woo slammed his coffee cup down, hot liquid splashing across his desk as he stared at the holographic display floating before him. The three-dimensional map showed the Kepler 442 system in painful detail. Tiny blue dots represented the human colony ships of New Geneva, peaceful and vulnerable. Surrounding them like hungry wolves were 500 red markers. The Vorthak. Empire's battle fleet. How many civilians? Park's voice was steady, but his knuckles were white as he gripped the edge of his desk. Lieutenant Lee Min-ho swallowed hard before answering. 47,000, sir. Mostly families. Scientists, engineers, teachers. They went there to build a new world, not fight a war. The young officer's hands trembled slightly as he pulled up the colony records. Pictures flashed across the screen. Children playing in New Geneva's artificial parks. Couples walking hand in hand through the dome cities. Elderly folks tending to the first crops grown in alien soil. These weren't soldiers. They were dreamers who had traveled light years to start fresh. Commander Kim Da-yoon burst through the door, her uniform wrinkled and her breathing heavy from running. Sir, we've intercepted the Vorthak transmission. They're not playing games this time. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Vorthak's reptilian face. His yellow eyes gleamed with cruel pleasure as his forked tongue flicked between razor-sharp teeth. When he spoke, his voice was like gravel mixed with poison. Humans of New Geneva, he hissed, each word dripping with contempt. You have stolen what belongs to the Vorthak Empire. Your terraforming technology has turned dead worlds into gardens. We want this knowledge. You have 72 hours to surrender your scientists and all research data. If you refuse, we will turn your colony into cosmic dust. Your choice. The transmission ended with Vorthak's laughter echoing through the chamber. Several Coalition officers looked sick to their stomachs. 72 hours, Park repeated quietly. That's not enough time to get our fleet there. Even if we left right now, we'd need at least 3 weeks. The room fell silent, except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of ships launching. From the station's docks, everyone knew what this meant. New Geneva was doomed. What about the other species? Suggested Lieutenant Kim. The Altarians have fast ships. Maybe the Centaurians could spare a battle group. Commander Kim shook her head. I already checked. The Altarians are dealing with their own border conflicts. The Centaurians are 3 systems away, and their ships are too slow. Even if every Coalition member sent their fastest vessels, we'd still be looking at 2 weeks minimum. Park stared at the tactical display, his mind racing through impossible calculations. 47,000 innocent people, 72 hours. 500 enemy warships. The math was simple and brutal. Sir, a voice called from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see Ambassador Choi Ji-hai standing in the doorway. The human representative looked calm, almost serene despite the crisis unfolding around them. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the standard Coalition diplomatic uniform, but something in her eyes made the room. Go quiet, Ambassador, Park said, his voice heavy with sorrow. I'm afraid there's nothing we can do. The numbers don't work. We can't get there in time. Ji-hai stepped forward, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Actually, Admiral, there is something we can do. What do you mean? Commander Kim asked, a spark of hope flickering in her voice. We can send the Relentless. The room erupted in chaos. Officers shouted over each other, voices rising in disbelief and concern. 1 ship? Lieutenant Lee's voice cracked. Against 500? That's suicide. The Relentless is powerful. But she's not a miracle worker, added Commander Kim. Even our best ship can't take on an entire fleet. Ambassador Ji-hai raised her hand, and somehow the room fell quiet again. There was something about her presence that commanded attention without demanding it. Gentlemen, she said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty, you're thinking like Coalition officers. You're thinking about numbers and tactics and conventional warfare. But the Vorthak aren't facing a Coalition ship. They're about to face a human ship. Park frowned. I don't understand the difference. Ji-hai smiled, and for a moment it was both beautiful and terrifying. "Admiral, when was the last time you saw a human give up? When was the last time you saw us accept defeat because the odds were bad?" "Never," Park admitted quietly. "Exactly. The Vorthak are about to learn something that every other species in this galaxy has learned the hard way. When humans say we're coming to help, we don't send overwhelming force. We don't need to. We send one ship, one crew, one chance, and that's always been enough." 3 days of hyperspace travel felt like 3 lifetimes aboard the UES Relentless. Captain Nam Tae-hyun stood on the bridge, watching the swirling blue tunnel of faster-than-light space through the main viewport. His crew worked quietly around him, each person focused on their tasks with the kind of calm intensity that comes before a storm. 30 seconds to normal space," announced Navigator Oh Ye-jin from her station. Her voice was steady, but Nam could see her hands gripping the console a little too tightly. Everyone knew what they were about to face. "All stations, report status," Nam ordered, his voice cutting through the bridge's tension like a knife. "Weapon systems fully charged and ready," called out Lieutenant Commander Park Soo-jin from Tactical. "All missile tubes loaded, energy banks at maximum capacity. Shields are holding at full strength," added Engineering Chief Kim Dong-min. "Hull integrity at 100%, all backup systems online. Communications array is clear and functioning," reported Ensign Yoon So-young. "I'm already picking up Vorthak chatter on multiple frequencies. They sound excited." Nam nodded grimly. Of course they were excited. In their minds, they were about to witness the destruction of a single human ship that had dared to challenge an entire armada. They probably saw it as entertainment, dropping to normal space in 3, 2, 1. The swirling blue tunnel vanished, replaced by the cold black of open space, and there, spread out before them like a metallic plague, was the Vorthak fleet. 500 ships. Nam had seen the numbers in the reports, but seeing them with his own eyes was different. The enemy vessels stretched in every direction, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. They formed a loose sphere around New Geneva's orbital stations, like vultures circling a wounded animal. "My God," whispered Communications Officer Shin Hairin, "there are so many of them." "Size of the fleet doesn't matter," Nam said quietly, but loud enough for everyone on the bridge to hear. "What matters is how badly they want to fight when things get ugly. And trust me, things are about to get very ugly." Sensor Officer Lee, Jae-wook's console lit up with warnings. "Captain, we're being scanned by multiple targeting systems. They've got weapon locks on us from at least 50 different ships." "Let them look," Nam replied. "The more attention we get, the better." A harsh beeping sound filled the bridge as an incoming transmission request appeared on the main screen. The alien text was automatically translated. "Admiral Vorthak demands immediate communication." "Put him through," Nam ordered, settling, back in his command chair with the casual confidence of a man who owned the situation. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were face to face with Admiral Vorthak himself. The Vorthak leader was everything the intelligence reports had described and worse. His reptilian features were twisted into what might have been a smile, showing rows of needle-sharp teeth. Yellow eyes gleamed with cruel amusement, and his forked tongue kept flicking out to taste the air. "Well, well," Vorthak hissed, his voice like nails on metal. "The mighty humans have finally arrived. One ship, one tiny, pathetic ship." His laughter was like breaking glass. "I almost feel sorry for you." Nam's expression didn't change. He could have been discussing the weather. "Admiral Vorthak, I'm Captain Nam Tae-hyun of the UES Relentless. I'm here to discuss your immediate withdrawal from this system." The alien's laughter grew louder, and Nam could hear similar sounds coming from other ships across the fleet channels. The Vorthak found this incredibly amusing. "Withdrawal?" Vorthak's voice rose to a screech. "You want me to withdraw? Human, I have 500 warships, you have one. One, do you understand numbers? Can your primitive brain even count that high?" Lieutenant Commander Park Soo-jin's hand moved toward her weapons console, but Nam held up a finger, stopping her. "Not yet." "I understand numbers perfectly, Admiral," Nam said, his voice remaining calm and conversational. "But I don't think you understand humans. Let me help you with that." Nam leaned forward slightly, and something in his posture made the bridge go completely silent. Even Vorthak seemed to sense the change. "I'm transmitting a data package to your flagship now," Nam continued. "It contains evidence of 17 separate war crimes your forces have committed across the outer systems. Civilian transports destroyed, colony ships vaporized with families still aboard. Surrender offers ignored so you could practice target shooting on refugee camps." Vorthak's amusement began to fade as the data appeared on his screens. "The Galactic Coalition has authorized me to offer you one chance to avoid prosecution for these crimes," Nam said. "Withdraw your forces immediately, return to Vorthak space, and never threaten human colonies again. In exchange, we'll consider this a misunderstanding." The silence stretched for several seconds before Vorthak erupted in fresh laughter. "You're threatening me. Me! With evidence. Human, I care nothing for your coalition laws. I have the strongest fleet in this sector. I take what I want when I want it." Nam nodded as if he'd expected this response. "I thought you might feel that way. In that case, Admiral, you have exactly 1 hour to reconsider your position and begin your withdrawal." "Or what?" Vorthak sneered. Nam's smile was cold and sharp as winter steel. "Or I'll show you the difference between a human warship and every other ship you've ever faced." The chronometer on the bridge of the Relentless ticked down its final seconds. Captain Nam Tae-hyun watched the numbers fall with the patience of a hunter waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Around him, his crew sat at their stations like coiled springs, every muscle tensed and ready. 10 seconds, Captain," announced Navigator Oh Ye-jin, her voice barely above a whisper. Across the Vorthak fleet, alien commanders were placing bets on how quickly the single human ship would be destroyed. Some said 30 seconds. Others, feeling generous, gave it a full minute. Admiral Vorthak himself had wagered it wouldn't last long enough to fire a single shot. They were all about to lose their bets. "Time," Oh Ye-jin said quietly. Nam's voice cut through the bridge like a blade. "Weapons free. Begin the hunt." What happened next defied everything the Vorthak thought they knew about space combat. The Relentless didn't charge forward in a desperate frontal assault like they expected. Instead, it seemed to simply vanish from their sensors for a split second before reappearing directly behind the first enemy squadron. "How did they do that?" snarled Subcommander Hisktar aboard the Vorthak destroyer Bloodclaw. "Ships don't just disappear." Lieutenant Commander Park Soo-jin's fingers moved across her tactical console like a pianist playing a deadly symphony. "Adaptive camouflage engaged. Sensor scramblers active. They can't get a clean lock on us." The Relentless moved through space like a living thing, twisting and turning in ways that should have been impossible for a ship of its size. Its hull rippled and shifted color, matching the background stars so perfectly that Vorthak gunners found themselves shooting at empty space. "First target acquired," Park announced, initiating pattern Delta 7. The human ship's weapons fired with surgical precision, not the wild spray of energy that most species used in battle, but calculated, strikes that hit exactly where they would do the most damage. The Bloodclaw's main reactor went critical in seconds, turning the destroyer into a brilliant fireball that lit up the darkness. But the Relentless wasn't done. As the Bloodclaw exploded, the human ship positioned itself perfectly to use the expanding debris field as a weapon. Chunks of twisted metal, some as large as shuttlecraft, came hurtling toward the remaining Vorthak ships with devastating force. "They're using our own ships against us," screamed the captain of the Bone Crusher, as a piece of the Bloodclaw's hull tore through his ship's bridge. Engineering Chief Kim Dong-min monitored his screens as the ship's revolutionary modular systems worked their magic. "Hull sections rotating to optimal configuration, Captain. Armor plating adapting to their plasma frequency. We're taking their hits and turning them into glancing blows." The Vorthak had never seen anything like it. The human ship seemed to learn from every attack, adjusting its defenses in real time. Weapons that should have punched through its hull harmlessly splashed against adaptive armor. Energy beams that should have fried its systems were absorbed and redirected back at their sources. "This is impossible," Admiral Vorthak roared as he watched his tactical display. "No ship can do this." But the Relentless was doing exactly that, and more. Sensor Officer Lee Jae-wook called out coordinates as the ship seemed to be everywhere at once, striking from angles that shouldn't have existed. "Next intercept point calculated, Captain," announced Navigator Oh Ye-jin. "They're trying to box us in with a pincer movement." "Let them try," Nam said calmly. "Show them what happens when you try to trap a predator." The Vorthak squadron commanders thought they had been clever, moving their ships to surround the human vessel. But the Relentless didn't try to escape the trap. Instead, it turned the enclosed space into a killing field. The human ship spun on its axis like a dancer, its weapons firing in all directions simultaneously. But these weren't random shots. Each blast was perfectly calculated to create maximum chaos. Ships collided with each other as they tried to avoid the deadly accurate fire. Others found themselves caught in crossfire from their own allies. "They're making us shoot each other," realized Captain Vorkesh of the Skullrender, but his warning came too late. His own fleetmate's plasma cannon had already reduced his ship to scrap metal. Communications Officer Shin Hai-rin intercepted the increasingly panicked transmissions, flooding the Vorthak channels. "Captain, they're starting to break formation. Some ships are requesting permission to withdraw." "Denied," came Vorthak's furious response over the open channels. "No retreat. All ships, focus fire on that human vessel, but focusing fire on..." The Relentless was like trying to hit smoke with a hammer. The ship moved with an intelligence that went beyond mere programming. Every dodge, every turn, every seemingly impossible maneuver was perfectly timed to turn the enemy's strength against itself. Weapons specialist Bei Young-soo coordinated the ship's arsenal with inhuman precision. Loading kinetic penetrators. "Captain, targeting their command ships for maximum psychological impact." "Do it," Nam ordered. "Show them what fear looks like." The kinetic rounds weren't just weapons, they were messages written in steel and fire. Each shot that took out a Vorthak command ship sent a clear signal to the rest of the fleet. Nowhere was safe. No one was beyond the reach of human determination. As the first hour of battle ended, the impossible had become reality. 73 Vorthak ships drifted as lifeless hulks in the void, while others fled in panic despite their admiral's orders. The Relentless sat among the wreckage like a shark surrounded by the remains of its prey, barely scratched and ready for more. Admiral Vorthak stared at his tactical display in growing horror, finally understanding the truth. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution, and he was next in line. The second wave of Vorthak reinforcements dropped out of hyperspace, expecting to find the wreckage of a single human ship floating among the debris. Instead, they found something that would haunt their nightmares for the rest of their lives. Captain Morthek of the dreadnought Worldender stared at his tactical display in complete disbelief. Where his admiral had promised him the scattered remains of one pathetic human vessel, he saw a graveyard of Vorthak ships stretching across space like a metallic asteroid field. "Sir," his communications officer whispered, "I'm reading over 200 of our ships destroyed or disabled. The human vessel is still active and appears to be hunting the survivors." Morthek's blood ran cold as he watched the Relentless move through the debris field like a living nightmare. The human ship wasn't just fighting anymore, it was sending a message written in fire and twisted metal. And that message was simple. This is what happens when you threaten our people. Aboard the Relentless, communications officer Shin Hai-rin monitored the flood of panicked transmissions from the newly arrived Vorthak fleet. Her normally steady voice carried a hint of amazement as she reported to Captain Nam. "Sir, they're calling us Deathbringers and Void Demons. Some of the ship captains are requesting immediate permission to withdraw. The fear in their voices is, well, it's unlike anything I've ever heard." Nam nodded grimly as he watched. Admiral Vorthak's flagship, desperately trying to rally what remained of his original fleet. "Fear is a weapon, Officer Shin. Sometimes it's more effective than any gun we carry." The truth was that the crew of the Relentless had pushed themselves and their ship beyond what should have been possible. Medical Officer Dr. Song Min-jung had been monitoring everyone's vital signs throughout the battle, watching in fascination as human biology did what it did best under pressure. "Captain, the crew's adrenaline levels are off the charts, but everyone's still performing at peak efficiency," she reported. "Heart rates are elevated, but coordination and reaction times have actually improved. It's like the entire ship has become one organism focused on a single goal. That's because we have, Nam replied quietly. Every person on this ship knows what we're fighting for. Those 47,000 colonists down on New Geneva aren't numbers on a screen to us. They're our people, our responsibility. Engineering Chief Kim Dong-min's voice crackled over the intercom from the engine room. Captain, the ship's adaptive. Systems are learning faster than our computers can process. It's like the Relentless wants to win this fight as badly as we do. The human ship continued its deadly dance through space, and with each passing minute, the psychological pressure on the Vorthak fleet grew stronger. This wasn't how space battles were supposed to work. Ships were supposed to line up and trade shots until one side had more wreckage than fighters. But the humans had turned warfare into an art form, and their canvas was painted with enemy blood. Lieutenant Commander Park Soo-jin's targeting systems had evolved beyond simple weapon coordination. She was conducting a symphony of destruction, each shot perfectly timed not just to destroy but to terrify. "Loading plasma charges for the next sequence, Captain," she announced, targeting their fuel depots and ammunition storage. "When these ships go up, the fireworks will be visible from 3-star systems away." "Do it," Nam ordered. "Make sure every Vorthak in the sector knows what happened here today." The explosions that followed were like miniature suns blossoming in the darkness. Chain reactions rippled through the enemy formation as secondary explosions turned individual ship kills into devastating area effects. Vorthak crews who had been confident in their numerical superiority just hours ago now found themselves desperately trying to escape a nightmare that seemed impossible to wake up from. Admiral Vorthak's voice cracked as he opened a fleet-wide channel, his earlier arrogance replaced by something approaching desperation. "All ships surround the human vessel. Use ramming speed if necessary. I don't care what it takes." But surrounding the Relentless had become impossible. The human ship fought like something alive and furious, adapting to every tactic the Vorthak tried. When they attempted to overwhelm it with numbers, it used their own crossfire to destroy them. When they tried to ram it, it turned their momentum into collision chains that took out entire squadrons. Weapons specialist Bae Young-soo had stopped thinking of his job as operating weapons systems. He was delivering messages, each shot carefully, crafted to maximize not just physical damage, but psychological impact. "Kinetic rounds loaded and ready, Captain," he reported, targeting their command ships. "Maximum fear factor achieved." "The fear isn't the goal," Nam said, his voice carrying across the bridge so everyone could hear. "The fear is just a side effect. Our goal is simple. We go home, and they don't threaten human colonies ever again." As the 4th hour of battle drew to a close, the impossible had become inevitable. 3/4 of the Vorthak fleet was either destroyed, disabled, or fleeing in panic. The survivors clustered around Admiral Vorthak's flagship, like frightened children hiding behind their parent. Finally, the alien admiral's voice came across all frequencies, cracked and broken by what he had witnessed. "What are you? What kind of monsters fight like this?" Captain Nam's response was broadcast not just to the Vorthak fleet, but to coalition observers, news networks and monitoring stations across the galaxy. His voice was calm, steady, and absolutely certain. "We're not monsters, Admiral. We're human. And the difference between us and every other species you've bullied is simple. When someone threatens our people, we don't calculate odds. We don't worry about numbers. We just win." The silence that followed Captain Nam's words was deafening. Across the debris field that had once been the mighty Vorthak armada, the only sounds were the hiss of escaping atmosphere from damaged ships, and the occasional groan of twisted metal cooling in the vacuum of space. The UES Relentless sat motionless among the wreckage like a predator that had finished its hunt. Its hull bore the scars of battle, burn marks from plasma cannons, dents from kinetic impacts, and patches where the adaptive armor had taken hits that should have been fatal. But the ship was alive, intact, and ready for more if necessary. Intelligence. Officer Lim Da-hai monitored her screens as the surviving Vorthak vessels began their retreat. "Captain, I'm detecting massive hyperspace signatures. The remaining enemy ships are jumping to FTL. They're not regrouping. They're running." "Good," Nam replied, settling back in his command chair for the first time in hours. "Let them run. Let them carry the story of what happened here to every corner of Vorthak space. On the surface of New Geneva, colonists emerged from their underground shelters like people waking from a nightmare. Children pressed their faces against the observation domes, pointing up at the single human ship that had stood between them and annihilation. Adults wept openly as they realized they were safe, that their families would see another sunrise. Dr. Kim Suar, New Geneva's chief administrator, stood in the colony's main communications center with tears streaming down her face. She had spent 3 days preparing evacuation protocols and writing final messages to loved ones back on Earth. Now she was watching a miracle unfold in the space above her world. "Get me a channel to the Relentless," she told her communications officer. "I need to thank Captain Nam personally." The transmission reached the ship just as Nam was conducting damage assessment with his senior staff. When Dr. Kim's face appeared on the main screen, her voice was thick with emotion. "Captain Nam, on behalf of all 47,000 colonists of New Geneva, I want to thank you. We thought we were going to die today. Our children thought they'd never see their grandparents again. You saved us all." Nam's expression softened as he looked at the woman who had carried the weight of an entire colony's survival on her shoulders. "Doctor, we did what any human would do. We protected our own. That's not heroism. That's just who we are." Meanwhile, at Coalition headquarters, the emergency session that had begun 3 days ago was reaching its conclusion in a way no one had expected. Admiral Park Hyun-woo stared at the real-time battle reports flooding in from long-range sensors, his face a mixture of awe and disbelief. "Final casualty count," he announced to the assembled representatives. "Vorthak losses, 412 ships destroyed or disabled. Human losses, 0 ships. Minimal damage to the Relentless, no." Casualties reported. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. The Altarian delegate's 4 eyes blinked rapidly as he processed the numbers. 1 ship against 500. The mathematics should have been impossible. Ambassador Choi Ji-hee stood quietly at her podium, her expression serene as she watched the other species representatives, struggling to understand what they had witnessed. "Gentlemen, you're still thinking in terms of mathematics. Humans don't calculate odds when our people are threatened. We simply do what needs to be done." The Centaurian ambassador's tentacles writhed in agitation. But how? How does 1 ship accomplish what should have required an entire battle fleet? "Because it wasn't just 1 ship," Ji-hee explained patiently. "It was 1 human ship. There's a difference that apparently needs explaining to the rest of the galaxy. Across space, the news was spreading faster than light itself. Emergency broadcasts reached every major world within hours. The story was simple but shocking. Humanity had faced impossible odds and turned them into a one-sided massacre." On the Vorthak homeworld, emergency sessions of their high command were already underway. Admiral Vorthak, one of the few survivors of the battle, stood before his superiors with his pride in ruins and his confidence shattered. "They fight like nothing we've ever encountered," he reported, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not like warriors or soldiers, but like forces of nature. They don't retreat, they don't surrender, and they don't show mercy to those who threaten their people." The High Commander's scales rattled with barely controlled fury. "You lost over 400 ships to 1 human vessel. 1. "With respect, sir," Vorthak replied, "you weren't there. You didn't see what I saw. That wasn't a ship we fought. It was death itself, wrapped in human steel and human determination." The Vorthak High Command made a decision that would echo through the galaxy for generations. Standing orders were issued to all Vorthak military forces. Avoid human space at all costs. Do not engage human vessels under any circumstances. The empire that had bullied dozens of species into submission had just learned fear. Back aboard the Sioux, Relentless, Captain Nam received a priority transmission from Earth Command. Fleet Admiral Johnson's weathered face filled the screen, his expression proud but unsurprised. "Captain Nam, outstanding work. The entire human fleet is proud of you and your crew. Come home when you're ready." Nam nodded respectfully. "Thank you, sir. We'll depart as soon as we've ensured New Geneva's safety." As the transmission ended, Tactical Officer Park Soo-jin asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Captain, do you think they'll try this again? Will other species test us like the Vorthak did? Nam smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. It was the smile of someone who had sent a message that would be remembered for centuries. They're welcome to try, Lieutenant, but they'll learn what the Vorthak learned today. When humans commit to protecting something, we don't fail. Ever. The Relentless began its journey home, leaving behind a lesson written in the wreckage of 400 enemy ships. The galaxy had been reminded of a fundamental truth about humanity. They didn't need overwhelming force or superior numbers. They just needed to care about something enough to fight for it. And when humans fought for something they cared about, the universe itself seemed to bend to their will.